Good evening, everyone. It's me, Drive Ghost, and welcome to another tier list. This time, since I'm kind of in a little bit of a Mortal Kombat craze at the moment, I figured, why not make a video, basically like putting together my perfect Mortal Kombat wiki using all the characters up to Mortal Kombat 11. 11 specifically because I'm not that into Mortal Kombat 1, and I really don't care for a lot of the changes in that one, so I'm not really including anything from that. But I will be ranking these characters on a tier list based on whether or not I would have them personally in a roster if I was designing a Mortal Kombat game. And as you can see, we have 5 tiers here. Up the top, we have must-have. This means these are the mainstream characters, the ones who appear in like nearly every game, and you really can't have any without them. Any games that don't have these characters are honestly kind of weird. Personal choice means that I would personally choose them to include them in the game, either because I really like them or I think that they are underrated, might serve any kind of general story. Basically just my personal choice. Only if relevant is characters who are really interesting and like really good, but they kind of have to have the plot like revolve around them or focus on them. So they're the characters that, yeah, you should include them, but if you do, you have to make sure the story heavily involves them. You can't just throw them in. Maybe DLC means these characters could be interesting, but you really shouldn't be including them in the main roster because they might be taking up room for more important characters. So maybe we can just like toss them in as DLC. And then it's just characters that aren't really interesting at all. No one really cares about them. They're just like not important. You can't fitting them in isn't very fun or anything like that. So it's just like, nah, we're not gonna waste any character slots including this guy. So those are the tiers explained, let's get into it. Alright, so first up is Ashra, and I find Ashra to be a bit of an interesting character, being like a demon from the Netherrealm who finds this sword called Chris, and it like basically puts her on a path of redemption and slaying evil and all that sort of thing. I think she's an interesting character, but would she be my personal choice to include in a roster? That is a tough question, because I do like Ashra, and I do find her kind of interesting. But at the same time, I don't really see her being interesting enough to justify putting her on the main roster. Because, her story is a pretty specific one. I feel like it's not one you can just kind of toss in and just forget about. So I think I would put her as DLC. I think she would be a pretty good choice as a DLC, as a slightly more obscure character who could be made, added in just for the fans. Alright, here's an easier one for me. Baraka. I love Baraka. He is definitely among my personal choices to include. I think it's just because I like Tarkatans or a lot of Outworld races in general. I like monstrous designs and stuff like that. And since this is also an easy one, Blaze. I would love to see Blaze again. He's one of my favorite boss characters. But the thing is, given his role in Armageddon, I don't think he's a character you can just, shoo in. I think it would have to focus around him, and the only way I can see that really working is if they do an Armageddon storyline, which, let's be honest, they're never going to do a proper one again. Because for some reason they're so afraid of continuing the... sorry about that. So, anyway, next up is Bo Raicho, the master of Kung Lao and Liu Kang and Shujinko, and honestly, he's trained a lot of characters. He is an interesting choice, but I think even NetherRealm realizes he's the kind of character who isn't necessary to include. And I think they got it right by having him be DLC in Mortal Kombat X. He's a cool character to include, and his fighting style can be interesting and stuff like that. But he's not really a character who ends up being relevant to the story anytime he shows up. At least not heavily relevant. Yeah, he trains Shujinko and he trains a lot of these characters, but, he fills the obligatory master role. The role of the mentor. So, he doesn't really take the spotlight very often, which is fine, that's just the nature of his character. So, yeah, having him as DLC is good, but I wouldn't want him taking up a slot in the main roster for other characters. Okay, so you might notice I just added a new tier because I was looking at the next character, Cassie Cage, and I realized there wasn't really an in-between tier for me. A character that I would be fine with either way. And Cassie kind of fits into that, so I added in the tier fine either way. Basically just like, I'm fine if they show up, I'm fine if they're not. And Cassie kind of fits that for me because, yeah, she was really relevant in Mortal Kombat X and kind of relevant in Mortal Kombat 11, I guess. But at the same time, like, you don't really need her. She's not as important as Johnny Cage or Sonya, for example. Unless the story is specifically set up for her to be the sort of main character like it was in Mortal Kombat X. I could put her in only if relevant, but again, I'm fine if she shows up either way, because she is a pretty fun character. Okay, this one is easy. Chameleon and no. Because Chameleon straight up, like, does not have any major lore, unlike Chameleon. That's how I'm going to try to make the distinction, is by pronouncing it that way. Basically just an Easter egg character who doesn't really have, like, lore significance or anything like that, at least to my knowledge. And yeah, he's just really not all that interesting, so if I had to choose him to be a character, I would probably just go with Chameleon instead. It's really hard to say that without saying Chameleon like the Ben 10 alien. Is my boy Cyrax. Not gonna lie, I always preferred Cyrax over Sector when it came to the Cybers. The first game I ever played was Mortal Kombat 9, aka Mortal Kombat 2011. And I thought Cyrax was cool as hell, like the net, the buzzsaw, teleport, the bombs. He was so cool to me, so if I had to choose any Cyber, it would probably be him or someone we'll get to later, who I'm not going to bring up right now and spoil it. But yeah, I love Cyrax, and honestly, I would love to see him more so long as I don't change the cap. Anyway, that was weird. So this one I know this one's kind of going to be controversial because I found out that people really don't like D'Vorah. And I used to be someone who really hated D'Vorah because she killed Melina. Yeah, I'm a Melina fan, I'm a Melina simp and all that, but these days I've warmed up to Melina. Like, I like insect-based designs and characters and powers and stuff like that. But at the same time, they just really keep doing some obnoxious stuff with D'Vorah's character. So at this point, I think I would just put her in fine either way. Like, yeah, if she shows up, she's probably gonna have some, like, interesting design stuff, some interesting moveset stuff. But I'm also going to be completely 100% fine if she does not show her face in the next game. Or this hypothetical game. Okay, here's one that I've kind of been waiting to get to. Taven and Dagon. I'm gonna go ahead and put both of them in only if relevant. Let's see, where's Taven? Get out of my face! Where's Taven? Found him. There he is. These characters are kind of designed around their story, and like the story of Armageddon and stuff like that. Dagon a little less so, because I believe he's the leader of the Red Dragon clan, but at the same time, that clan isn't very interesting, at least not usually, so I would include them if they were relevant, again, if they do an Armageddon storyline or something like that, or just something about the conflict between them and all that stuff, so like Argus and all those things. But I wouldn't want them to just be like, shoot in for like the sake of a cameo or something. Pun not intended. Okay, I literally had to go to the wiki and look up some stuff about these two because I know next to nothing about Order Realm characters, so Dairo, literally nothing about his character screams as interesting to me. In fact, I think in Mortal Kombat 1 they actually turned him into the character Havoc, which, okay, but Darius, on the other hand, I can see potential with his character, with him being like from a realm of order, but seeing the order as oppressive and all that. I could definitely see potential there. I'll put him as maybe DLC. Because, I wouldn't want him to take up like a slot or anything, but it would be very interesting to have him if they did his character good. Alright, here's another pair that we can do together. Draman and Moloch. I believe that's how you say his name. They're decently interesting characters, and it's fun to see more NetherRealm characters. Characters from NetherRealm, not NetherRealm Studio characters. It's interesting to see, like Demon and Oni characters, but at the same time, these two are so, like, relatively uninteresting Then unless you add like some specific lore and stuff, I'm fine just either way. Like, you can have them show up and just be like grunts or something in the background who just immediately get their shit kicked in, but yeah, it could be interesting, but at the same time, I probably wouldn't want them taking up a slot. But I also don't think that they would be very good as DLC characters, so I would say just either way, I'm fine. We are many, you are but one. Yeah, Ermac is definitely a personal choice. Even back in, as like a kid playing Mortal Kombat 9, I thought he was cool. 'Cause, let's be honest, he is cool. And that's really all the justification we need, but he also has interesting characteristics and stuff like that. You know, being a collection of souls and having... He's honestly one of the stronger characters in the series, which seems weird from an outside perspective. Like, just looking at stuff that happens in the recent games. But yeah, he's actually a really strong son of a gun. That's probably why they end up, like, kind of nerfing him in the story modes and stuff, because, you know, if he wasn't nerfed, he would kick the absolute crap out of most characters in the series. Well, I don't want to say most. No, actually most, given how many jobbers there are in the series. Alright, Aaron Black. He's one I didn't have to think on that much. He's kind of a cool character, but I'm fine either way. Like, if he shows up, cool. If he doesn't, cool. Like, he's just not that interesting to me, but at the same time, he has a cool design, and I like his voice. So it's not enough for me to justify saying, yeah, he'd be my personal choice. But I would say it could be fun to have him, so yeah, either way. And while we're on this, Ferritor would be my personal choice to come back, because I do think Ferritor is very interesting, especially as like a species with them being like parasitic. I know they brought back Farah in Mortal Kombat 1 as a cameo, but it was like only her. And I know that happens in her arcade ending, but like this is a new timeline. You could have just had Tor be with her. But anyway, I would want them to come back because they are pretty interesting. Alright, time for the Frost conversation. I'm going to say this. Frost is my personal choice, but only in a specific way. And I might get flack for this, but I personally really liked Cyber Frost in Mortal Kombat 11. Granted, I don't like that she has kind of like that cocky-ass Injustice 2 Damian Wayne personality. But I do like that they made her a cyber as a way to set her apart from Sub-Zero, because while I do know their fighting styles can be different, the fact of the matter is, on like a very, like, surface level observation, the only difference between them is gender, because they're both Lin Kuei, they're both cryomancers, you know, martial artists, assassins, all that stuff. So I do like there being some distinction. And also, you know, her being cyber gives her more opportunity to set her apart with, like, moveset and powers from Sub-Zero. And I do think Frost can be an interesting character in that way, especially given that she has a, like, mentor-student relationship with Sub-Zero that's very shaky and, you know, very difficult. So if she's included in some way like that, like, maybe in this hypothetical story, she joins the Lin Kuei or the Tekunin, not realizing exactly what's going to happen. She almost gets cyberized, but Sub-Zero comes in, like, thwarting their plans and stops them right before she gets fully cyberized, and that's the explanation for why she's not a full cyber. Maybe something like that. But anyway, I just think that she would be very interesting, and if she wasn't a cyber, she would be my personal choice. Especially because I actually really like Cyber Sub-Zero, and I would like to see him return, and in that way he kind of would with Cyber Frost, because, you know, similar and stuff like that. Man, looking at the roster, we got some good choices coming up. We're on a roll right now. Fujin would be my personal choice. I know Raiden is a shoe-in for every game, but come on, let's have more Fujin. He's cool, he's like Raiden's counterpart, and he has wind and stuff. I know Kitana kind of uses wind a little bit, because with her fans and stuff, but come on, Fujin's a god, and he's supposed to also be protecting the Earth Realm. Why isn't he showing up as much? It really doesn't make sense. I think they even, like, kind of poke fun at that in Mortal Kombat 11. Anyway, next up is Geras, and he's one I had to like debate about back and forth a lot in my head. I think I would put him in only if relevant. I was going to put him in fine either way because I do like his like sand-based powers, his time-based powers, and I find it very interesting. But at the same time, he's tied to a very specific plot point that I really do not like. I really hate the Hourglass, and I really hate Chronica, and I really hate the Titans, and I really hate Mortal Kombat. Alright, that got away from me. So, I would like Geras if he was relevant. If you like change around his character and stuff, maybe he's just like someone who travels across like all throughout history finding like the strongest combatants and stuff like that. If he's like rewritten in something like away from the Hourglass, please, NetherRealm, please get rid of the Hourglass and the Titans. If that were the case, then yeah, I would want him to come back. But again, it would only be if relevant. Because I wouldn't want him like taking up slots and stuff for other characters if he wasn't relevant. You know, he was for Mortal Kombat 1 and Mortal Kombat 11, and I do like his powers and stuff like that. So there's that. And Goro. Goro is a must-have for me. I'm gonna be honest. Goro and the Shokan in general are so freaking cool, and I love them so much. And honestly, I'm kind of upset that Mortal Kombat 11 didn't have Goro, aside from him being a corpse in his own lair. And yeah, a little bit upset he wasn't playable in Mortal Kombat 9, but at the same time, like, none of the bosses were, except for technically Shang Tsung. But even then, he was like a mini-boss, kinda. But I remember playing Goro in Mortal Kombat X. It was fun. It's fun just to be a big beast and just beat the crap out of people. And getting to fight him, like, every time on the ladder, guaranteed. I do prefer Kintaro over him. But Kintaro might be in a different tier when I get to him. Anyway, so Goro is a must-have for me. He's basically a requirement for the Mortal Kombat lore. I mean, he was the original champion for Mortal Kombat 9 times in a row. And, you know, he beat Great Kung Lao, so he has ties to two main Shaolin monk characters, both Kung Lao and Liu Kang, who are both rivals. He is a very integral character to both of them, essentially. Alright, here's a character who's kind of tough for me, which is Havoc. On one hand, he's like, to my knowledge, one of the only relevant Chaos Realm characters. If, like, maybe even the only one, as far as I know. So on one hand, that's really cool. But on the other hand, was he really that interesting previously? I may have to go look at his wiki page. I'll be right back. Alright, after reading a little bit from his bios and stuff, I do think he would be an interesting character. You know, his thing of, like, he absolutely hates order. And again, he is the only, like, relevant Chaos Realm character. So I would put him in fine either way. Actually, I think I'd put him as maybe DLC. I find it hard to believe, well, not hard to believe, but it doesn't seem like it would be that easy to include him, like, relevantly in a story. But he would be a very cool DLC character, especially since he has, like, decent movesets and stuff like that. Oh, shit. Sorry about that, I forgot that Chrome does that. I'm gonna put Hotaru right beside Havoc, because from what I've read from their bio and stuff like that, they're pretty interconnected, and I do think Hotaru's character is a little bit interesting with the aspect of, like, he'll preserve order no matter the cost, and all that stuff. So, maybe if he and Havoc were together, it would be... You know what, I'm thinking I might move them now. Nah, I think I'll leave them there. Their story would work really well together, and they're kind of inseparable in that regard, because they both represent, like, two sides of being, like, essentially zealots, or, like, fanatical and stuff like that. So they could be interesting, but at the same time, it feels kind of hard to weave their conflict in their story into a narrative without it being like some kind of side story. Suhao, I would go with fine either way. I'm one of those people who I don't really like hate Suhao like the freaking creators do. Like, holy crap, why would you create a character that you hate so much? But I'm also fine if he never actually shows up as a combatant again. Like, it could be interesting to see him and having more like Dragon Clan members. Dragon Clan being, because I have a hard time remembering who's part of the Red Dragon Clan and the Black Dragon Clan because I don't give much of a damn about either of them. But the point is, I'm fine with him either way. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. Jackie might end up getting into fine either way along with Cassie because she's kind of the same vein character. Not vain as in like arrogant, why did I say that? She's in like the same vein for me. Like, she's cool and I like stuff about her, but at the same time she doesn't really need to be relevant and she's not like that important that I would say like, oh yeah, I really personally want to include her and all that. Because I really prefer Jax over her if I'm being honest, because well, for one, I like how heavy his hits are in games. Like, when you hit someone as Jax, it feels strong as hell. Jackie doesn't really give that same vibe for me, but again, I'm fine if she's there, fine if she's not. Jade's going to be another character going in only if relevant, because while I do like Jade, I do think she's pretty cool in her stuff, and I do like her color green. Green might be one of my more favorite colors, I'm not sure about that one, but Jade could be very interesting, but I would only want her to be included if she's relevant. I don't want her to just be kind of like shoehorned in there. Yet another character I had to Google and like look up on his wiki page just to find out I could not give less of a damn about him. Jarek is going right nah, because I do not care about him. Apparently his whole thing is just that he was like Kano, but not interesting at all. I mean, apparently he got his own unique moveset in Armageddon, but like, I'm really just not that interested in him. And then we have Jax, who I'm very interested in seeing. I've already said that I find his attacks really satisfying because you really feel like the weight and the impact when he hits someone. And I love that gotcha grab punch where he just grabs them by the neck, just beats the freaking piss out of their face. I love it so much. Alright, here's a pretty obvious one, Johnny Cage. You can't have a Mortal Kombat game without Johnny Cage. He's like one of the many characters you could label as a main supporting character, something like that. You know, he's been there since the beginning. He's one of the characters you just can't not include. He has to be there. Especially since he has one of the most iconic moves in the entire series, that where he does the split, just punches them right in the crotch. He even had a fatality that involved that. You can't have Mortal Kombat without Johnny Cage, is what I'm saying. Next up is Cabal, and he's another personal choice of mine. I really like his hook swords, I think his mask is cool and stuff, and especially his super speed. I remember playing him in Mortal Kombat 9, and he was pretty fun. And I overall just really like his origin in that game, of him being like a former member of the Black Dragon and then like giving that up and becoming an officer. Then he gets scarred, he has the mask, and then he refuses to rejoin the Black Dragon even though Kano helps him. But overall, I just think his powers and his weapon are really cool, so he would be my personal choice, but I do understand if many people would be like, yeah, we don't really need Cabal. Although I do think he is somewhat of a fan favorite character. Alright, I'm not gonna lie. The wiki literally had nothing about this had next to nothing about this guy's character. His name is Kai, and they have next to nothing about him. He doesn't do much. Ooh boy, I know this one's gonna be controversial. I would put Kano in fine either way. Okay, now hear me out. I love Kano. I love his personality. I love that he's a total scumbag and that he has a very interesting, like, dynamic with Sonya and stuff like that in the Special Forces as a whole. And, you know, he has cybernetics and he's cool. He's got his, like, ball roll attack and stuff like that. But honestly, to me personally, he's rarely truly relevant to a story, and I would honestly be fine with him either being in a game, being not in a game. He's not one of those characters that I would say is a must-have. Like, he's cool, and I would be happy if he's there, but at the same time, I don't feel like he's a necessary choice, and I'm not gonna be, like, losing sleep if he doesn't end up there. Alright, Kenshi, this might be one that I also get flack for. I would say Kenshi is maybe DLC. I know he was DLC in Mortal Kombat 9. And I do think he's very interesting as like a blind swordsman, and his lore and stuff is really interesting. But at least until Mortal Kombat 1, it doesn't really feel like Kenshi and his lore was very relevant when he appeared. He was usually kind of just there and like kind of doing stuff, but not really. Did he even get a chapter in Mortal Kombat X? He might not have, now that I think about it. But yeah, he's a cool character and could be good for DLC, but I don't really see him being all that relevant. Next, Chameleon. I'm just gonna say Chameleon, screw it. She would be a personal choice because unlike Chameleon male, Chameleon female does have very interesting lore, or at least she does have lore, and I think somewhat has a relationship with Reptile, I don't fully remember, but I do just like her as a character more. And here's another character who's gonna be a personal choice, Kintaro. I actually like Kintaro more than Goro. I just accept that he's not as relevant. It was stated, I believe, back in Mortal Kombat 2 that he was like as strong as Goro, but his agility was superior. And I do like the dynamic between like the Tigrar lineage and the Dragon lineage, how they have like some stuff going on there. Kintaro is cooler to me because like he's a freaking tiger. And that is cool. I just accept that he's not as much of a must-have as Goro is. But hey, if it was me personally deciding all of this, he would be a must-have. Because I like him more than Goro, honestly. Alright, Kira, I don't even really have to look her up. I know there's not much interesting about her, so she's a nah. Kitana is one of the must-have characters. 100%. Cobra, from what I know from like True Underdog Gaming and stuff like that, his and Kira's whole thing is just they kill each other and betray each other. Even in their own endings, they get killed by the other or something like that. So I'm really not all that interested in either of them. So they're just nah for me. Alright, needs a second to decide for Kodo, but I would go with only if relevant for him, because I used to really not like him, like replacing Shao Kahn and stuff like that during Mortal Kombat X. But honestly, I've come to appreciate him a lot more, to the point where I would want him to be there only if relevant, because I wouldn't want him to just be like shoehorned in. Because his powers are cool, like him having relation to both blood and sun, having sort of like an Aztec inspiration, which I really like design-wise. And with like the blue-green kind of like skin stuff and like the tribal markings. I like his design and I like his powers, to the point he would only be my choice if he's relevant, because I don't want him to be there uselessly. And I also don't want him to be a jobber, because he is strong as shit in the comics. Stop making him really weak. Kujin is going to be personal choice, because his fighting style is so interesting to me. Like, he uses exclusively a bow and arrow, and he mixes that in with like martial arts and stuff. He's cool. Why did they drop him so early? Like, he appeared in one game and now we just forget he exists? Like, no, come on. Alright, Kung Lao is a pretty easy must-have. He's the rival of Liu Kang, for God's sake. And despite what modern games would have you believe, he was at least implied to be relative to Liu Kang, like in the earlier games, like in the Midway era games. And his weapon is iconic, like the chakram hat with like the blade and stuff that he just slices people's heads off and stuff like that. Kung Lao is bloody cool, and I do believe that you can't really have a Mortal Kombat game without him. Shit. I need to stop doing that. I know I'm gonna get roasted for it. But anyway, so I'm gonna be 100% with y'all. I did not think Li Mei was going to be as interesting as she was. She was one of the characters I had to look up stuff for, and just looking at her like biographies and bios and stuff like that, she seems like a very interesting character. Like, she's enslaved and she's fighting in tournaments to help free her people. She's been, like, trained by Shujinko and stuff like that. And her people have, like some things that they considered sacred and stuff. She seems very interesting. At least in, like, the original timeline. I don't know much about her MK1, because I don't care about that game in general, but she honestly, like, the way she's being set up from these bios, it sounds like she could be the main character of a Mortal Kombat game, or at least, like, one of them. Because her goals actually just kind of scream like main character, so honestly, I would want her to be included, but I would want her to be relevant, because again, her story sounds extremely interesting to me. Oh, and Liu Kang, yeah, that's obvious. We all saw that coming. Okay, here's one that's very tough for me, Mavado. Because on one hand, like, the Red Dragon and Black Dragon aren't all that interesting to me, at least most of them aren't. But at the same time, Mavado has a pretty interesting weapon in the form of the bungee cords. But now that I think about it, there is a certain character who comes up towards the end of the tier list that I definitely know where I'm placing him, roughly. And he kind of, like, outdoes his weapon, so I think at the end I'm going to put him in Nah. He kind of is just, like, he was kind of biting Cabal's style, was it? Didn't he steal his weapons? Yeah, that was the thing that happened. Oh, here's an interesting character, Meat. I don't know if Meat is, like, a popular character or not, but he would be a personal choice for me. I do think you can do something interesting with him if you really, like, put your mind to it. I know he wouldn't be very relevant, but I do think that he has potential. Oh, and Melina, obviously. I already said I'm a simp for her. And, let's be honest, you guys really don't care if I put mocap here, do you? Alright, here's another good personal choice. Motaro. And I really like Motaro as a centaur, not when he was like a minotaur for some reason in Armageddon, because I guess they just couldn't do that in 3D at the time. But, like, come on, he's a centaur? Well, a centaurian. He has, like, interesting powers, like, he can shoot a laser from his tail, I believe, and he can, like, couldn't he reflect projectiles? Was that a thing? Anyway, he's just a very unique fighter, like Ferret-Tor, and, like, think about it like with Ferret-Tor, for example. Like, they don't fight very traditionally, and it makes them very interesting. Motaro is kind of the same way. He would be a very intriguing character to play as and to fight against. Like, even if you guys can't make him playable, you can at least make him like a boss. Come on. I know he was a cameo in Mortal Kombat 1, but I don't care about that. Nightwolf. Very interesting character to me. I really like sort of tribal, ancestral-like characters. And Nightwolf's powers were very interesting to me. And he had, like, a pretty cool scene fighting Sindel in Mortal Kombat 11 and stuff like that. He uses, like, the axes, the tomahawks, the bow and arrow. He's one of the only other characters to use a bow and arrow. He's an extremely interesting character to me, and I would like to see him appear on rosters more. Okay, Nitara is kind of a tough one for me. That one's really difficult. Because on one hand, I really like monsters, and I do think the, Veternian? Is that what they're called? Veternians? The freaking vampires are interesting. And, you know, I do like her design and stuff like that, but at the same time, I really don't think I feel very passionate about her to say that I would prefer her or not. So I would say fine either way. Oh, and Noob is easily a personal choice. I think he is so freaking cool. Oh, and here's another easy choice, Onaga. I have wanted Onaga to come back ever since I found out about him. Like, he is so cool. He's so cool. But at the same time, I would only want him to come back if he's relevant, because I don't want to just be like, oh guys, Onaga's here, and then Luke Cage just like punches him in the nuts or something and he just passes out. Like, I don't want that. If he comes back, I want it to be a big deal. Here's another one that might be kind of controversial, because I know Quan Chi has a lot of fans, but honestly, I'm fine either way with or without him, because I've never liked him as much as I like Shang Tsung, for example. Which, like, I don't hate him. I just don't feel, like, as passionately about him or anything like that. So again, for me, it could be either way for him. Like, if he doesn't show up, fine. If he does, fine. And, like, he has interesting powers and stuff. I just don't know why he doesn't vibe with me as well. Especially because he's, like, a character from the Netherrealm. Like, he really should click with me, but he just kind of doesn't for some reason. Oh yeah, and Raiden, like, obviously. Alright, here's another pretty easy personal choice. I really like Rain, especially since he's one of, like, I believe 2 characters have water-based powers in Mortal Kombat. One of them is Hydro from, like, the comics, and I think he appeared as a cyber in, like, a promotional thing, or, like, something like that. I think it was to do with Mortal Kombat X. He appeared at one point, like, semi-officially, I believe. And he appeared in the comics. And I would like Hydro to appear more. Because Hydro does seem pretty interesting. Like, a Lin Kuei who's just water-based instead of ice-based. And, like, yeah, I know then it would just kind of be, like, Rain light. But at the same time, like, Rain can use lightning as well. And Raiden can already do that. And Nightwolf can kind of do that. So, like, it's okay for characters to share some powers. It's all about how they use them. But Raiden, personally, I do find him interesting, and, like, purple's my favorite color. So, yeah, I would be fine having Rain in a roster. And, honestly, I would want him there. Okay, after reading up on Reiko... also, I probably should have clarified this at the beginning, but I'm only including, like, original timeline stuff. And stuff from, like, Mortal Kombat 9 and Mortal Kombat X. Because as far as I'm concerned, those are the only games that, like, matter to me. Anything beyond that is, like, I really couldn't care less. Unless you're Gearus, but then... I did not know before that Reiko actually served Shinnok and, like, led a battle against the Elder Gods. He's kind of like Leviathan in that regard, I guess. But he is a more interesting character. The only problem I have with him is that a big part of him in the original timeline is that he's just mysterious. That really doesn't do him any favors. You know, he's interesting enough. I would say maybe DLC. Because he is kind of the perfect DLC character. It's like he has, like, some cool backstory and some cool lore and stuff. And he can do some cool stuff in combat. But he doesn't have enough lore and significance that he has to take up, like, major stuff in the story. Reptile. I was originally going to make him personal choice, but I think I would go with only if relevant, because I want Reptile to be relevant. I want him to be relevant so bad. Because, like, he's one of, like, 3 remaining Saurians. Or Cetrions. So, I'm calling them Saurians, I don't care. He's one of, like, only 3 of them left. One of them has absolutely no lore, and one of them's whole thing is, like, copying other people's moves. That might be both of them, actually. So, make Reptile's story matter. Like, his is a very interesting story, like, wanting to save his race and stuff like that. And, you know, lizards are cool, and he has really cool powers. Like, he has this extendable tongue, he can turn invisible, acid projectiles and stuff like that, like his force balls. I watched, like, gameplay of Shaolin Monks last night. This dude had a giant frickin' snake. That is so cool. Damn it. I don't know if I forgot to pause that all the time. Now, anyway, Serena. Let's talk about Serena and ignore the possible mistake that I just made. Okay, Serena. Serena's story is pretty interesting after looking at it. And before this, I didn't know that she was actually a member of the Lin Kuei, which I find interesting. You know, we don't have enough Lin Kuei and Shirai Ryu, I don't think. At least none that are, like, stay relevant. But at the same time, I don't think she has enough to her story to be super relevant, so I would go with DLC for her. Especially because she's, like, demon from the Netherrealm, joined the Lin Kuei, she has honor and all that, like, she feeds off life force or something like that. I think it said in the Tournament Edition bio, to, like, sustain her human-looking form. And I do think she would be very interesting. Oh, Scorpion. Come on, let's be serious right now. Let's be serious. You can't not include Scorpion. You can't. Sector, I feel like, is one of those characters you can only include him if, like, the Tekunian or the Cyber Lin Kuei are relevant, because otherwise he just kind of doesn't matter. Well, I don't want to say he doesn't matter, like, he can make a difference, but I feel like like I said, the only reason you would be including him is because it has something to do with the Lin Kuei, and especially the Cyber Initiative. Because outside of that, what does he have? Like, his father is the head of the Lin Kuei or something like that. Was that his father? Yeah, I think it is. He, like, usurps them, takes over the Lin Kuei, then loses to Sub-Zero, who takes them over. Yeah, he kind of has to have a little bit of the plot center around him if you include him. Oh, and Shang Tsung is a must-have. And Shao Kahn too. Oh my god, that is a roll. That is a 2-for-1 special right there. Both of these guys are kind of like must-haves in Mortal Kombat stories. Like, Shang Tsung does so much stuff, and he does all of it for Shao Kahn. Wait, actually, you know what? No, Shao Kahn only if relevant. I know Shao Kahn is important in, like, the overarching story of Mortal Kombat, but I am so mad that he was in Mortal Kombat 11 and Mortal Kombat 1, and he was nothing but a watered-down, drooling dumbass. And he was just, like, thrown in for the sake of it. I do like the thing about him just being made a general in Mortal Kombat 1. But, like, that just pissed me off so much. I only want him to be included if they make him relevant and do him right. Because you can't think small with Shao Kahn. You just simply can't. Or with Shang Tsung, but he's easier to just, like, fit in. Anyway, calming down from that, Shiva. Yeah, Shiva would be a personal choice. Again, I love Shao Kahn. I also think that her character and, like, the arc she goes through and stuff like that can be pretty interesting. So I would definitely say alongside Kintaro, she would be one of my choices. As, like, if I can choose who to put in this roster, she's definitely going to be up there in priorities. And I will not clarify why any further than that. You all know the additional reason. Shinnok, another character kind of like Sector. You really can't include him without having the plot heavily involve him. But it's especially with him, it's more like Blaze, Taven, and Dagon. Like, the plot has to revolve around him. You can't just, like, toss him in. Also, I just realized I don't think Cetrion is on here. Or the Kollector. It's just Gears. Huh. Anyway, Shinnok, like, fallen Elder God, like, I believe ruler of the Netherrealm, maybe, at one point? No, I might be wrong about that. But, like, he was the big bad in Mortal Kombat X, and I believe, was it Mortal Kombat 4 as well? Either way, the plot has to revolve around him in some way if he's included, unless it's Armageddon, which just had, like, every character, so they couldn't all be like that. And honestly, that was probably a bad idea in retrospect, but they thought that was going to be their final game. Anyway, I want Shinnok to be included if he's relevant, because if he's not, he shouldn't be included. Shujinko would also be a personal choice of mine. I do find Shujinko somewhat interesting. He's not, like, the most interesting character around there, but I do like the whole thing in Mortal Kombat Deception where, like, he thought he was being the hero and being this chosen one, only to realize he was being deceived and accidentally helped Onaga return and stuff like that. That is very interesting. Like, a character who thinks he's the chosen one and thinks he's, like, destined to do greatness, but then he gets tricked by this evil into unleashing, like, an even greater evil and stuff. And then he goes on to, like, teach characters like Li Mei and stuff, and, like, trying to correct his past mistakes. I think that Shujinko's arc could be very interesting if handled properly. Oh my god, I've been recording for 44 minutes. Sindel is also going in only if relevant. Obligatory Mortal Kombat 11 sucks for changing her character, and Mortal Kombat 1 is just far less interesting. Her original character arc in, like, the original series of being, like, being brainwashed and stuff like that, and her having taken her own life over guilt of the stuff that, like, Shao Kahn did. Yeah, that was very interesting. But what made it interesting is that she wasn't evil. she was good and she was just being brainwashed. And eventually she had redemption and stuff like that. So if they do it right and they make her relevant in that way, then yes, absolutely, I want to see her. If not, don't even bother. Okay, Scarlet is kind of a tough one because I do like her powers and I do find them kind of interesting. I've been thinking on hers for a minute. I'm gonna say... I know she's not gonna be a personal choice, and making her relevant might be a bit tough, so I know for me it's either going to be fine either way or maybe DLC, because I know she was DLC at one point. You know what, I'm gonna be generous, I think, and say fine either way. I don't know if that's generous or not, but... like, if she shows up, cool. Like, that's cool. If she doesn't, I mean, yeah, I might miss her a little bit if she was in the previous game, because she is kind of cool, but... I just don't think she's interesting enough for me to say that, yeah, she would be a personal choice. But you know who is interesting enough? Smoke. And also, slight tangent, I love his Mortal Kombat 9 design. I like how he has the flowing white-gray hair that kind of looks like smoke blowing in the wind. That was so cool, and I wish he came back and kept that design. I love it so much, man. But yeah, he would be my personal choice because I do find his element of like smoke very cool, kind of like, you know, Smoker from One Piece or something like that. And him being like an Enenra, and I believe the only Enenra at that, it's very interesting, and I would like to see him come back more. Ooh, we got a good... like, these last ones are good. Okay, Sonya's a must-have. Like, she's the first woman in Mortal Kombat. You can't not have her. And you're weird if you don't. Stryker. He would be a personal choice for me because I do think he's pretty cool. Obligatory because the first one I played and the one I grew up with was Mortal Kombat 9. But I do think it's cool that he uses, like, the guns and stuff, and he uses the baton. I love his X-rays so much in Mortal Kombat 9, bro. It's so badass. He shines the light in the face. He just, like, hits him on the forehead with it, then with the baton right in the jaw, and then it tases them. And he has grenades for some reason. I don't know why he has grenades, but I love it. I'm just such a sucker for Stryker. Like, he is so cool to me. Oh, yeah, and Sub-Zero. Like, come on, it's Sub-Zero, come on. There's only been, like, one game that didn't have Scorpion and Sub-Zero, and I believe it was a handheld game. Takeda is definitely a personal choice for me. I think he's so cool. Like, he's a Shirai Ryu, and he has, like, aspects of both Scorpion and Kenshi, but he doesn't feel like he's biting either of their styles because he manages to feel unique. Even with the whole thing of, like, yeah, he's related to Kenshi, trained by Scorpion. It doesn't feel like those are his only traits. And also, yeah, he's the character who kind of knocked Movado down to nah tier. Because I know their weapons are different, but let's be honest, the way the bungee cords are used, like, Takeda can do that with his weapons too. Like his, what are they, like chain whips or something like that? Or like blade whips, whatever they are. Those things can kind of basically do everything the bungee cords can do. This kind of hurts as a Melina fan, but I think I'm going to have to say maybe DLC for Tanya. Look, I know she's Melina's boo and all that, and like they have a relationship and stuff, but I've also recently learned that she's just a total freaking backstabbing traitor. So I'm not sure I want her to be relevant as a Melina fan, because it's probably going to end with her betraying Melina or in some way. I mean, it doesn't have to, but at the same time, like, Tanya's also just not I don't want to say she's not interesting, but she's not one of those characters who I'm just like, oh yeah, she's going to be in like my top 10, I'm 100% going to include her and stuff like that. She's just not one of those characters to me. Tremor is 100% a personal choice for me. I love Tremor so much. I discovered him in Mortal Kombat X, and oh my god, I loved him. Like, I think in general I just love earth manipulating characters, and it's especially cool to me that he also does like gold and crystals and lava and stuff like that, and how I believe in one of his endings he becomes a demigod technically. I want him to show up more. I think at one point I even made fan art of Tremor like 2 years back or something like that. I want to rework that. It didn't end very well. My art was not that great back then. But I would love to see Tremor appear more just in general. I think he was even in Mortal Kombat 9 in the PSP version and the Challenge Tower or something like that. I don't know too much about that one. I played it on like the PS3 and then the Xbox 360. Which I have right now, actually. I might play this later. But in general, Tremor is very cool to me. I don't mind that he's Black Dragon. And, you know, even the whole thing about him being abandoned at one point, then wanting revenge on Kano, that can be made pretty interesting. And Triborg, I'm fine either way. Like, to me, Triborg can be interesting, but it feels like he was just designed specifically for the system in Mortal Kombat X, where you had the different, like, fighting styles and stuff like that, the variants. Because it was basically just, like, an excuse to have, like, 4 cyber characters in one. Which is cool, admittedly. But at the same time, I think I would rather just have the individual cybers, not have them just take up one character. Anyway, let me scroll up a little bit. This is the completed tier list. Oh, you can barely see it the way I have it cropped. Sorry, I was trying to crop out all the ads and stuff. Because, you know, these tier maker things have like a ton of ads just all over the place. But I'll just like scroll up and then like slowly scroll down so you guys can see. This is the completed tier list. Tell me what you think about it, guys. And I'll have the tier list linked in the description below so you guys can give it a shot yourself. And, you know, have some discussion in the comments and stuff like that. This is the longest video I have ever recorded. How long have I been recording up now? 51 minutes. Holy shit. And I don't know how to edit down videos, so I'm very sorry about this video. But I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.